Great Tuesday. Welcome to the No Othering, Miss Othering podcast. I'm your host, King. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Rachel and Jess. How you doing today, ladies?
Good.
Great.
Good, King.
What's your spiritual energy numbers?
Jazz hands.
Yes,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a 10 as well, so I join you all in that, living in a state of gratitude. So this has been our second show and our new first show with the newly named Miss Othering. So with that being said, Rachel, why don't you walk us into your thoughts behind Miss Othering and what we're going to be building on today's show?
Well, misothering, misothered, however we're going to present this, is something that came up during a conversation as a result of me reading a book. I always forget the name of the book. And it was about othering and how people other each other. And the book started out talking about how white people had othered Black people in order to feel good about allowing themselves to make them slaves. And then it goes on to a lot of the psychological aspects of how the humans in general, other people, not just other people, but other things. And then you can take it into so many areas, such as, othering because of a political stand, othering because of, I don't know, you're missing a limb, othering because you have a mental illness, or, it can go on and on and on. And I keep it in the back of my mind constantly now that I have come across this information and this reading that I did. And when we talked about it, we were like, wow, so many aspects to this. And I took it to, most recently, I've taken it to my studies with the spiritual world, and how religions othered each other, and I actually othered religion in general because I was brought up Catholic, and I'm like, oh, so yeah, I othered religion because I didn't like some of the things that were there, so I othered it. And kind of rightfully so in a way, because of the things that came about. But at the same time, no, I don't really want to other something. I don't want to other anything. I don't want my mental construct to live in that frame of othering anything. I would like to be able to connect and weave with and have understanding of and acceptance of and tolerance of even something that may not be aligned with me and my authentic signature of who I am. I want to come out of that design or that programming of othering something in order to make myself feel more important or feel better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my take on othering. And when I shared it with the two of you, you jumped in and we were like, hey, we've got some volume here. So
Yeah, I see it on so many aspects, and thank you for sharing that, where it's just like it's in so many aspects of our life. And for me, it just feels really relevant right now as I'm going through a relationship ending and feeling that truth in me of not othering anyone as I go through it. It's a real practice
it is.
of finding like the new alignment, the new connection, the new spaces for belonging, so that there's no othering happening.
Yeah, I find it amazing how it applies so deeply, like even just one topic, how it can apply so deeply around that topic on so many different channels. I've really been playing with a lot.
Yeah.
And even go ahead, King. Sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Get a thought you wanted to.
I was just toying with the idea of even the idea of othering in itself can almost become that. Like, I don't want to be othering. It's like, okay, so what am I removing myself from by even saying that? Or how am I trying to make myself feel better about, or try to find a level of something just by saying that? Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
complete.
little tricky, right?
It is.
And I think for me, it's understanding that I don't want to continue to create suffering. I don't want to perpetuate a divide. I don't want to perpetuate a less than human narrative. I don't want to dehumanize anyone. So then how do we be together when we're actually not aligned? And how, yeah, it's a real practice. I'm glad that we're having this conversation today.
Me too.
You know, where it lies with my work and what I'm working on is that I look at it as othering comes from identity. You know, when you how you see yourself is how you now separate yourself from others. And now we gotta look at where did your identity come from? Your identity being, if you define your identity by saying in the first 30 seconds, if someone asks you, who are you? And your answer to that question, who are you, is either your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, your political ideology, your religion, your trauma, your career. If there's any of those division things, then you are by definition looking at it from an othering lens, because you're saying I'm separate in this context. And then of course there's even play within that division. Once you say your sexual orientation, now you can add the career so they can overlap. And all that now becomes what someone has told you what those definitions were. And we give it value, and so much value to the point where some of us will even kill or die over that identity, or watch killing and death be exploited over those identities. And so now I look at it as a construct, then continues to feed. It's common knowledge now that the algorithms influence everything we watch. If you do any form of streaming, if you do any kind of internet-based activities at all, it's you're being influenced by algorithms based on your choices from the systems, understanding exactly who you are based on your demographic, based on your age, because your medical stuff is online. You handle your license stuff online. You handle your banking online. You handle your sharing of posting of social media online. So AI actually understands you better than you understand yourself, because it understands who you really are, where you understand what you wanted yourself to be. And then you have your shadow self that still comes out that you don't know about, that people around you do know about. And so once this construct has that information, of course they're going to target everything to you, and they can trigger you on call, just as Pablo and the dog. Once you train a dog and you get down, say, I'm gonna blow that whistle, and the dog salivates, and because it's been trained and conditioned over time that so when they hear that bell, then dinner time. And that's what people now are conditioning their minds based on their identity being so deeply implanted in them that when they get triggered, it's like that bell, and it's like now anger, or this emotion, or this kind of reaction. And when you can do that to somebody else, trigger them based off words, that is the truest definition of force. And that's where I think that the misother now comes into play in this conversation, because as long as we continue to see everyone external to us as the other, then at some point they will be your enemy. And they will be the reason why you are in the pain that you're in, is because of them, because that's what you're being fed and told. And it depends on what's going to trigger you to really act in that space.
So in essence, you're othering yourself, if you want to break it down. I mean, because in the end, if they're becoming your enemy, then somehow you've othered yourself to create an enemy, to create something separate from you.
Right. And then, as you know, and we love to have his presence on the show, Todd, understanding of, just physics is that we're not separate. We are energy. We are quantumly entangled. We're connected. So othering is just mental waste of energy.
Mhm.
And we've been taught that, like I said, through the construct. Since we were born, you're taught that.
Yes.
You're taught your gender, you're a girl, you're a boy, right there. And then as you grow from there, your cultural givens come into play, as my partner Reggie used to say. And that culture givens now tells you your ethnicity or your race or all those other things. And then your
Mhm.
parents come and tell you their expectations upon you. And this is where you go to school, and this is how you behave in school. And so you haven't had a choice to make any of those decisions. You just came in the world full of love energy. And then
Mm.
you've been directed into that, and then told at the same time that anything that's of value to you that you should look at for happiness and joy, those are external values. They come from cereal and sugar, or TV shows and toys. And the kid is constantly wanting those things because you've taught them that that's where happiness is. That's what joy is. It's never internal.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, that was our conditioning, wasn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep. Born into lack. We talked about this last week.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
then
can
it's
see
just
definitely
reinforced.
sorry, Rachel.
No, I was just saying that the lack is just reinforced after the day one.
It is. And I can see that it's so clearly in identity. I can even see with the relationship that I'm ending now that the reason is because I stepped into an identity that
Mhm.
was limited. And I'm curious too, even when an identity comes up from a diagnosis,
Mhm.
how that might shift and create some
Absolutely.
othering.
Yeah, I'm glad that the you had brought up King. You brought up the identity, and I wanted to touch on that. And then Jess, you just reminded me again how identity, and this has come up in several conversations for me over the past week. How my identity keeps coming up, and what is my true identity? Like I identified with my hair. Now I don't have hair. I identified with my body structure, my strength, even. And now, as a result of me going through this cancer journey, my strength is so different. I went out and did the garden this weekend, and I mean, it was a chore just standing up, getting down, standing up, getting down, planting the seeds literally. And I'm noticing how my identity is shifting every single day into something new. But at the same time, because of my awareness of identity and my awareness of what all of that entails, like all the sages say, let go of your identity and become your true self. And we don't even realize what our identities are until boom, they're right there in your face. Um, I never thought about my identity being my hair, but my whole life, even since I was a little girl, oh, you have such beautiful hair. That gets ingrained in you.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you don't have it, you're like, oh, okay, that was part of me. But it wasn't actually part of me, but yet it was. So we're supposed to be embracing every aspect of ourselves. But then when we lose an aspect of ourselves, either voluntarily or not voluntarily or involuntarily, it it can be shocking if it's something we don't have awareness of.
Mm.
And I think it's important that for me, that I had a lot of these studies and a lot of these philosophies presented to me prior to experiencing everything I'm going through now. And it's helped for sure, but it's still shocking.
Mhm.
And in the end, what happened during the shock, and what I've seen of other people too, during that shock phase, people tend to other themselves. Like they look at themselves differently. And
Mm.
maybe from the shadow aspect of it, in a sense, even though othering to me is a shadow kind of, but you look at that portion of you, and I did this. I looked at that portion of me that was embracing the hair and embracing the strength, and I have all of this. And then when I didn't I othered myself, my new self, by almost coming down on myself and being like, oh, now you're other. Now you're different. Now you're other than what you knew all of your life. Whereas, I mean, what we should be doing is really just accepting each day and each moment as it is and doing the isming instead of the
Mhm.
othering. Yeah.
Yeah. That again takes practice, right? Because once the shock comes in, it actually creates a distortion in the energy field.
Right.
And that distortion is what fractals the energy, where then you can actually see yourself over there like, oh, that patient is getting this news.
Yeah.
What does that mean about them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And just so we can remove ourselves from the shock of like, that hit my soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that in line with this conversation, again, this is my own practice and my own way I look at things in my world of systems, constantly thinking of systems. Neville Goddard teaches us this acronym EYOPT. And when I first heard it, I thought it was crazy. So, no, that's, it definitely was a paradigm shift. But then the more I thought about it and the more I listened and leaned in and began to see life in that context, I understood it better. And it's basically saying everyone is you pushed out. And
Mm.
and you begin to look at everyone as you pushed out, then that stops the other. Because now you see people in your life, and what he's saying is that, let's just say, for example, it's a spouse, and your spouse is always angry towards you constantly. There's a friction there. Well, that's you seeing that person. There's over 100 million versions in the same timeline of that spouse, and the one you're seeing is the one you're triggering from what you're in your soul.
Mm.
Like what
Yeah.
you're manifesting is your soul has tied to your subconscious. That's everything that you've experienced and thought about since your essence, and it's in your soul. And thoughts are energy, and all that is energy. And so, what you're manifesting in real life is what your soul has to go through in this human form to understand, to grow, to learn. And you keep seeing repeated lessons, it's because you are never learning that. You're not raising your consciousness enough to learn that. And that's where we experiencing life as spiritual beings.
Mm-hmm.
And then we combine that with now being reprogrammed by something that we don't understand. So now we're really off centered from what our soul needs to be doing, because now we're battling all the noise and things that's not in alignment with who we really are. And once you go to, you talked about before, once it's in your face, I took that and I outlined that once you go through the wreckage of that thunderstorm. And a thunderstorm can be a health crisis, a financial crisis, a relationship crisis, an emotional crisis, where you hit rock bottom to the point where you are facing change, must change now or forever sink. And when you hit that level, and then you have to say, I'm changing for the better, which requires the intention and attention to be in harmony in order to make that happen. That's what I believe, that you now begin to question that identity there. Like, what has I thought about before me? Because when you do that, and that's what you've done, my eyes, Rachel, which makes you a deserving soul, and makes me want to now say, how can we continue to build a movement around that? Is even doing that pain, doing that part where it's the roughest, the toughest, the part where you want to be so much of a victim, and you want to be only focused on you and why me, why is this happening to me, and those thoughts are normal from the ego context. But when you can rise above that, your consciousness shifts, and you start to think about, there's a lesson in this, and the lesson is, what can I learn so that others don't have to go through this, because my life can be that lesson, and I'm willing to accept that. That shift there could only happen through that storm. Because prior to that, ego is telling you, as you said, I'm my hair, I'm my career, I'm my race, I'm whatever you really decide to say, that's who I really see myself. And I move through the world with that kind of perspective and lens.
And I think, King, I think that eventually And I'm not there. But eventually people can move to a space of not even thinking about it, just being it, just
Mm.
Right.
actually completely embodying all of that. And I feel like a lot of people probably feel like they're doing that but there's a difference between not being conscious about something and embodying something. Like if you're embodying a way of life, that's completely different than not being aware of yourself living in life. Like your awareness can become so aware that you embody it, and then you're acting from a place where you're aware of all of these reflections coming back at you, that there's a reason for it. And I mean, I believe that everything is talking to us. I mean, even my computer, the material that it's made out of, if only I knew the language. I knew, this napkin could talk to me if I only knew the language of that napkin, because everything has a consciousness, everything has an awareness. Otherwise, how could it exist? I know that's pretty deep, but that's just kind of the way that I feel about everything.
Yeah.
But it is hard. It's very hard to stand in that, and I call it standing in your power. When you're fully aligned with yourself and all that is, then you're standing in your full power, and you're able to navigate in a flow. The flow of love, of the universe, of God, divine, whatever you want to call it, creator, source. It just sweeps you away and you just go. And you don't have to put this thought process on it. You just do it. You act and you just are.
I believe that's the process, but I believe that most people are vibrating at such a low enough frequency that that's not their experience and their intent. So as you're saying, that's why I believe that the true bigger blessings that's going to impact generations only happen to the people who've been broken and tested. Because once you've been broken and tested, you're able to receive information differently than you would be if had not been broken and tested. You receive it and think it's you. And guess what? Your ego tells you that you're a guru. You're receiving God's messages. You got God's ability to, you're bringing God's vision to the world. And once you've been broken and tested, you realize, no, it's not.
Right.
You just get a clarity of what's really important to you because of what you've going through. And you've now been tested and you're toughened and you realize that this didn't break me. Then now I can see how I can help others experience the same level of intentionality and higher purpose and loving. And so for you, it seems like common sense and common practice is not so common to the others.
It's not.
And that's I'm othering, right? And
right.
but I do think that at a certain conscious level, and this is my belief, I don't just my understanding at this level of my education and awareness, that to get out of our identity, we have to choose a conscious identity, so to speak, that we choose based on our own choices, not off what we've been taught and we've been programmed, putting ourselves through a critical thought process of what do I want my identity to be? And then, because our identity needs to encompass all of me, not just a part of me. My race is a part of me. My gender is a part of me. My career is a part of me. My spirituality is a part of me. That's not the totality of me, nor do I behave with that identity perspective. So what will and what does? And I think the first step is the fully human. Because now you're saying I'm a human being, but I want to be fully into that. And then now that's a universal identity that everybody can be. That's no one gets excluded from that other than by their choice and their behaviors. Then I think once we get there, then we can rise above that to where that's not even relevant anymore. But I think there's levels that we have to ascend to before we can start operating that kind of context.
Right. And I think that the magic formula for doing that embodiment work, for actually being able to ascend, is to understand grief,
Hmm.
because I witnessed the shock. Two different occasions with Rachel where she was in a medical environment and information came in that created that distortion of, oh, this is information that's not resonating, or it feels shocking. And in that, there's this awareness that comes in of like, if that is true, then this. And when there was the information that came through of a potential end of life, and I witnessed that information, and then Rachel actually felt it. Like, what would it be like? How can I hold that grief? What would it be like if that were true? And it's that grief component that comes in that, if held and really understood and felt, then that's the embodiment, holding that grief. Because it's the awareness. It's that actual reality that if I hold that belief is going to be true for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's what the grief does for, I think, all of us collectively, is that's that storm. But it's not a bypass. It's not a get out of this. It's like, no, let me actually listen to what the grief is telling me. The grief is telling me that something's going to be separated or othered.
Mm-hmm.
And if I choose to believe that, that's actually what I will experience.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, obviously. I see it the way that I would explain it from my feels and my thoughts is patterns. I see things in patterns. And when I finally am, it usually what happens is something jolts me. And I'm like, oh, and I look around and I see a pattern. There's a specific pattern that's seen and noticed. And that's the number one, to even get to that space is the awareness. Like you said, oh, there's an awareness. Oh, there's a pattern. This pattern has been doing this, whatever that pattern is. All right, here's the grief part. Here's the part where it ends. This pattern ends, but it doesn't. It shifts because we can't completely remove something. Energy is infinite, or it doesn't ever stop.
Yeah.
So we shift it and we make the pattern spin this way or whatever
Right.
the patterning is. But the first component is the awareness of the pattern.
Yeah.
And then where the grief comes in for me, the way that I'm seeing it is that, okay, that pattern's done, no longer done. So then we have to start moving into a direction of, where does my soul actually fit and align with all of this information? Because clearly it wasn't in alignment with that old pattern. And something happened to show me, hey, this is not in proper alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so the grief, yes, thank you, grief, thank you. That moment. And sometimes people can't get out of that once they realize it. And that's where grief can take over your life, literally.
Yeah.
And I've had, most people associate grief with someone dying. And I've had a lot of people die in weird and absurd and abrupt ways in my life. And it can take a hold of you in ways that you don't even know. And it can take away your alignment and diminish you and create an othering of yourself within you. And you're not even aware of it again until something else comes along and makes you aware of it. I'm speaking from my own experiences. And it's like, oh, yeah, that came along and hit me. I saw that happen, but I allowed the grief to linger. I didn't allow myself to integrate with it and immerse myself in it and understand it and accept it. I created a conflict with it. And when you embody grief as a conflict, well, I mean, ultimately your life ends.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And even if it does, even if you do embody it, your life can end. But to look at it as a tool to create something new, to create a new pattern, to create a new way of existence or way of aligning yourself, that's where the power is in grief. That's where you can use it as like a superpower. And I think that's important for people to understand. And I don't know how to help people understand that other than just become aware. You know, when you get these big blows at you, oh, something's happening, look around. And
Right.
then don't just look around, let yourself sit with it and look inside too,
Mm.
because that's where something new is going to be born and rebirthed. Because when we die, I believe that it's not just a death, it's a rebirth. It's not just our death and rebirth, but everything and everyone that we know has to experience a death and rebirth also.
Mm.
You know, when somebody dies, they're letting go of everything that they've ever been identifying with. But when a loved one that we know here as humans dies, just that one person dies. And I don't want to say just, because it takes all of that away. Every ounce of essence that person has contributed to this time and space is removed now, except for the memories.
Mm.
And that's where we work with the grief and make it our friend instead of an enemy or a conflict.
Yeah.
I've been
And I
working
just
with
want to speak.
conflict.
Yeah, I just want to speak to that moment where you notice that you need to sit with it. And one of the things that I came in contact with you when we very first met was that you were a breathwork practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the thing that I've also noticed is the tool when finding a pause between the shock and the response. And that opportunity is that like synapsis, right? That gap.
It's the in-between.
That in between.
That moment in between. That's the moment of magic. It's that moment in between. That's where, you know, a lot of the breath work that I've practiced, there's a hold before you exhale or a hold before you inhale, however you want to look at it. I mean, we can take it from both angles. And in that hold is where magic happens. And I mean, that's the only word I can really put on it, because it's different for everyone. And when you have that exhale, that release, before you breathe in again, there's something new that occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in every moment of our lives. We can't escape that. Take it down to the most primal aspect of ourselves. Take it to the breath.
And let me share with you my analysis of what you shared and show you how aligned we are, because we haven't discussed this. This is happening real time as we talk and show true alignment. I perceive what you're saying as everything you said about when a person passes is absolutely right. Everything, their identity, all that stuff leaves. And what remains still is their energy, which is their soul. And now in us, that soul, that energy is the memories. The more we remember them, we're keeping them alive. We keep like the ancestors behind me and my image behind me. They're all alive because I'm keeping their energy and their thoughts with me, their words, I read their material. So I'm keeping them just as alive in me and guiding me as just there sitting next to me talking. And that's all about, again, energy being there. But I think that the way you're operating, Rachel, is that when there's the divine light in all of us, in each and every single person that's here, because we're all connected. However, I think only certain people who are vibrating at a higher level based on their thoughts are able to tap into a higher level of consciousness and tap into that awareness that you talk about. And I think the awareness is there, the capability is there for everybody, but everybody doesn't do that because they don't elevate their thoughts. They allow themselves to continue to be programmed by the construct, like I said, until they go through a wreckage. And then based on the seeds that's been planting in their head their whole lives about love and energy and service and helping. And those seeds were never planted there because they were only taught cruelty their whole entire lives. They may not have those seeds to grow through that storm, through that wreckage. And that's where they go in another direction. And you all talked about that space between, stimulus and response, between when you heard that and then you reacted that way. See, that is that test. That's that what separates you and the way you were able to, as you said, I don't know how to tell the people how to do it and self-aware, but it's also you being you is what's going to show the people how to do it. And that's why I believe that the burden, unfortunately, and fortunately, is within us and you, because you're showing folks through strength, this is how you respond. I talk about that wreckage being the decision between do I die or do I go forward more as a metaphor. But my life wasn't at risk. It was just I know I had to change my life in order to move ahead. Whereas your life is definitely at risk and you made it. So you are you taking my metaphor into actually reality. And that's where I see the alignment of what I'm learning from you in that process. And you're showing me this is what I've done in that stimulus response. And that to me is the message I believe that the world needs to see. Because the world sees that this is how you can respond in this type of situation. You can still choose love. You can still choose service. You can still choose giving. That to me is what the world needs to see and experience. And that's why it's so important that we get God serious moving and get you healthy and get you supported to make that happen. Because just think about if everybody thought in this way, how different the world would be, as opposed to everybody individually out there now who may be in a health crisis and they just dealing with it as being a victim. And I'm not judging them. It's what naturally the construct tells you to be.
Yeah.
How do you transition and make that decision to say, I'm no longer going to be a victim. I'm going to empower myself to do things for other people.
I think that everybody does have this in them. It's an innate thing in everyone. I think that it just has to be, it's been covered up. It's been buried in all these patterns. And a lot of the time when somebody experiences a death and they experience a sudden grief onset, something does shift in them. And they can choose how they want it to shift too. Like some people go into a deep depression and just want to lay in bed. I mean, I did that, but I also came out of it. It was that, I think that was the cocoon period of, and I'm talking about when I had people suddenly die in my life, there was this, everything shifted. And I think that everybody handles it differently, obviously, as they should, because everybody is different and aligned differently. But that one thing that's in common is that it's a point. It's like it's a checkpoint in your lifetime where you get to make a choice. And not only do you get to, I think that I would bet that anyone who experiences a sudden grief in their lives, and it doesn't even have to be sudden, that all of these grief points are shifting points, are transition points in some capacity. It could be just that you change your career.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as you change your eating habit or you change your thought about something.
Yeah. And it can even come up as anticipatory grief, something you perceive could be ending. Can also be that awareness of like, oh, I'm going to have to shift this if I don't want that thing to end.
Right.
So it can work even by perceiving a moment of grief.
Yeah. But and then you can also bring on moments of grief by doing just that. And sometimes it's not in alignment with who you are. Like I could force, and for example, me doing and being in this journey with the cancer, You know, there's often times where I'm like, I need to find, and I want to find, and another this, and take this, and have this. And it's like, whoa, that's way too much. And that's overload. And that's trying to escape in a way and coming out of the flow. And by doing that, you come up against that that conflict, and that in itself is a grief, because you have to change and let go of a mental construct that you've created. And anything we've created, you know, dies in a sense, or shifts or transitions, because it can't not. It always has to transition in order to keep going, which is fascinating to even talk about that grief, because for me, for so long, grief was associated with death, meaning physical human death, or an animal's death, or, you know, I've always been in tune with nature, so nature had a lot of death in it for me to witness. But bringing it to the human aspect of it, we can get lost in that really easily, and then we other ourselves again.
Yeah, it's been beautiful to watch you navigate it. I know you had an experience in Croatia. We talked about that story with you and Todd and King, and we captured that story. And then when I was with you at Mountains of Hope, there was another shocking experience there. When we got to New York, there was the third shocking experience. And at that point, you were skilled at it. You were like a master ninja. You were like, I'm very aware of this pattern now. And so you had that breath, you had that moment of like, before I react, I'm going to sit with this and get really clear about my belief system. And there was a couple days there in the hospital where you were just taking it easy and being with it. And King captured the story of the Croatia experience and put it into a signal, a sound frequency for you to receive. And I remember that afternoon that I brought it to you and I said, King has a gift for you. And I played it, and it was the most beautiful experience to witness you receiving that medicine that was your story, and then to witness you also release and let go of those tears. And in that moment, I was like, oh, I get it. I get what Goddess Tears is.
Yeah, I remember that moment very clearly. And I was just blown away and I'm still blown away by this, that someone took such value in me that they put so much time and effort of their own frequency into a creation that touched my heart, because they were so deeply rooted in their own heart and their own love. And that's how it was received. And just the tears, it was tears of beauty and connection and in awe of, because I've not been able to meet a whole lot of people who want to connect on that level, and to be able to meet someone who I barely talked to who could actually do that. I mean, I didn't even know much about King at that point, and that he could craft that. And that's a skill. That's a real skill.
Yeah. And I know King also,
yeah, that's the kind of skills I want people to learn in the world, like the real skills.
Yeah, he does have those.
Well, and I say this, that talent, that skill emerged from the wreckage of me. I mean, I wouldn't have attempted that, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe something else would have brought me there, a different path. But to be in a position to resonate at the frequency of someone, to want to create that to me was what I was observing within myself. Like, wow, so I'm emerging by your strength anyway. So that process helped me emerge. So that's why I say we truly are quantumly entangled if you let it go. If you let that go and let your identity go, as opposed to me saying to myself, I'm going to look at you and judge you on your race because I judge myself. I see myself through my race. Identify by my race. I'm going to judge you by your race automatically. It's whether it's consciously or not. If that's your identity, it happens. It happens that way. It's like if you see yourself as a male, you walk into the room, there's females, right? That's your first thought. And my question is, why? You didn't think to say I'm going to think that thought. You really want to believe you don't see others, but you going to see others because it's so embedded in your mind that that's the first trigger. It's observing the next thing, stimulus response. You gain wisdom enough, now you start to change your actions. But that initial thought, I think this is always going to stay there because it's now wedded in for 40, 50 years, we've been thinking this way. We're not going to change it from a 2-year, 3-year book retreat, alignment meetings. We're going to have to constantly be in that battle in the head to the point where the default now, because now we understand what true north is. This is the way home now. This is what I know. I'm not going to ever get to the point where there's never friction and doubt and chaos. It's just that I know now have a way to get out of it quicker.
You know now how to choose, and that you have that.
And you have that power. And that is empowering within itself at so many levels.
Yeah.
And King, you reminded, like I said, I think that everybody has this in them. And it's just all these things that we've been taught. I mean, I remember when I was a little girl, my dad was racist. I don't know why. I grew up in a very small town, and I'm really grateful because I was never really, besides my dad, I wasn't ever exposed to racism. So I just looked at people as people. Like, I don't care if you're black. I don't care what you are. I don't see that. Like, you're a person. That was a gift that I had growing up. And I remember one time when I was very young, probably way too young to see this. Remember the old TV show that was out, Roots? And I remember seeing it for a moment on TV, and I feel like I wasn't quite old enough to watch it, like I shouldn't have been. I was too young. And my dad made some comment in passing about it, and I just let loose on him. I was like, "Who are you? I can't believe you would even say something like that." And I'm like 5 or 6 years old, I think, maybe 8 tops, but I don't think much older than that. And I'm just like, "You should never talk like that, and I can't believe that, and this is wrong." And he was just like, "Oh," and he never reprimanded me. Like, I never got in trouble for talking, so it was probably considered disrespectful to talk to him that way as a young child, but I saw it so clearly that it was so wrong. And I don't know. I feel like it's something it's programmed into people. And I think I shared on our last show, I may not have, but we used to go to the doctors with my kids, and it would be like race. And I'm like, race? I'm human. And I'd say it in front of my kids. And ultimately there'd be the other spot, and I'd write alien in there because I didn't want to pick one. And I still don't do that. I don't want to pick, Latino. I don't want to pick black. I don't want to pick Caucasian. It doesn't fit for me. But you're right. In what you were saying before, the first step is to realize and to bring it to a fully human point. Yeah, we are fully human. All of us.
Yeah.
And the crow says so.
And then let others other themselves away from that if they don't agree. Right?
Right.
Because at this stage in our lives, and the way the world is, it's dangerous when people other themselves and see people as others. It's literally dangerous.
It is.
Men who have been raised their whole lives to see women as sexual objects only, and then they get lonely and they mistreated by other men, and they allowed to only be in their own thoughts. And now the algorithm will give them Substack articles and websites and videos associated with that line of thinking that they're in. And so
Right.
now, at some point of all that mental conditioning, they can be triggered to go out and write a manifesto and then go do something extremely destructive because
Mhm.
the energy is building because he associates his identity with this misled person, and the algorithms created that in that thought in that individual.
Mhm.
And I'm saying that we can do the exact same thing using that same process through love energy. We can send out songs that are designed to cut through the noise, to plant the seeds, that let
Mhm.
folks know that when you do go through the storm, and this resonates better then, that you might not feel it right now, but when you go through that storm and you're looking for some guidance, you're going to hear this song. And now we have God Exteriors to help guide you towards your health crisis, or
Mhm.
Trinity Peak Foundation to help you if you're dealing with your grief, because
Mhm.
we've all gone through that ourselves.
Or
And we were
fully
able
human
to,
to help us remember that we are humans.
Yeah.
exactly. And that's our journey, right? That's the, I said, that's the proverbial cross that we have to pick up. It's not fun, right? There's grief, there's pain associated with it, there's loneliness associated with it. But
Mhm.
that's who I believe we were put here to do,
Yeah.
to
It's work.
be,
Yep.
to be fully human, do this work, and have the impact by just being, as you said before, we be this, you know, then others will want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. We embody it.
Mhm.
And that's where the $33 now come into play. And I think that it's worth, as I said, it's now become a way of seeing where there's alignment. You know, through my years in my life, I've always connected and been a part of community building and building around a certain agenda, a certain theme. And now the theme is through the act, because everybody can be performative. Everyone can now say, I have a higher purpose. I want to help the poor people. I want to help people, you know, in other countries. They can say that and it sounds nice, like a politician running for election. But what changes what we're advocating is that you take action to give someone else $33 as a way of lifting them up and lifting yourself up through that same action. Because it's
Mhm.
not designed to be something that's expensive. It's designed to be more about the act of you doing it with the intentionality of putting $33 with there and understanding the universal energy toward that intentionality. That everybody who does it with that same intentionality. Is much more powerful than random people giving 50, hundreds, and thousands of dollars. It's
Mhm.
the intentionality behind it that creates the energy that's required to do the attraction that's going to bring us the people that we want to build with.
Yeah.
And then we're in position through our companies and our intentions to lift them up through that process. We got experience in Trinity Peak again, come back into play.
Mhm. And there's so much intentionality behind the 33.
Yeah.
There's also just so much intentionality with Goddess Tears itself as an energy of giving before receiving. Um, yeah, both of those things are very intentional.
I
And I
still
think,
struggle with the giving part. Not me giving, but I still struggle with the receiving part. I
yeah.
hear you even talk about it, and I notice my energy change. Like
Mhm.
I almost hold my breath. Like,
Mhm.
but then what it always comes back to is, okay, Rachel, you have to open up and
Mhm.
receive, because if you don't receive, you can't give. You
Right.
have to be able to refuel yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not just in the not just, on the level of Goddess Tears and the monetary. It's everything. You have to open up and connect, allow
Mhm.
the connections, allow the flows. And that's what it all comes down to. Because if you're not flowing, you can't identify these shifts, these transitions, and you can't navigate them, and you can't make the
Mm.
right choices
Right.
or
So
any
even
choices because you're
so
stagnant.
even yeah, exactly. You can't move forward, right?
Right.
So in any given moment when there's an opportunity to make a choice, just taking that moment to just stop and still and put your hands on your heart and take that breath.
Yeah.
And before just reacting and just pushing it aside and saying, this one's not for me, like really pause and feel in the heart, like the alignment with love, and then make a choice, an aligned action moving forward that is one of connection. And
Yeah,
it's that practice, right?
The alignment of taking it in. And yes, it is your heart ultimately. But I think that a lot of people may not be there to take it in and say, oh, in my heart, but just to take it in and be like, oh, what feels right?
Mm,
What makes my whole body feel right? The body tells all, always.
right.
You know, what makes me feel right with this? And not necessarily hold it. You might need a couple of breaths to be able to take it in. You might need a whole day of breaths to take it in. But the awareness of that, taking it in, is really important.
Mm.
And you
But
know,
then don't forget to exhale either.
Let it go.
Right.
and everything you're saying is that's nature and law. That's universal form of how intelligence and nature works. Like for example, the lemon tree outside yours window. It doesn't try to create lemons. It doesn't think about I'm gonna create lemons today, but I don't feel like it. It just creates lemons every single day. And
Yeah.
in that lemon creation process, it has to receive the rain energy, the moisture in order to grow. That's a part of its life cycle, right? That's what I'm saying with you. That's for you to manifest the artist's tears, you have to receive your energy for it to grow. You have to create your limits in that context. And that's just a part of natural universal flow. And those who understand that, those who are feeling that, or those who will give $33 and then tell someone else to join them in that activity because they realize they want to share of those limits.
Mm.
Right.
Because the $33 isn't about the money, it's about the connection and the creation and the continuation of creation and connection.
And just to Mike Murphy's point, now he wants everyone to daily have 5 minutes where we hold intentionality towards something positive. So this is that in its manifestation form. Is we all saying the same thing, just looking at it from different ways, and then we can incorporate the same thing if we start working together. Right, that's the power, and that's where the alignment and consciousness has to get out of above a higher vibration than ego.
Yeah. And, to piggyback on the Mike thing, Mike is definitely opening his heart to holding more of these moments where we can sit with our heart and create the world that we envision. And I know that was like the biggest highlight for you at Mountains of Hope, Rachel, to have that coherent healing. And so it is what we're enlivening again in the mornings, to bring that space back to each of our homes and bring the connection between all people who are stepping into being fully human.
Yeah, Mountains of Hope reminded me of my own personal alignment and all the tools that I had collected along the way, and that I had those. And I had forgotten that because I was in so deep into the pain and the suffering.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get lost in pain and suffering.
Yeah.
And
I
forget
remember
all about it.
Yeah. I remember asking you, like, what actually helped you make that change when you were at Mountains of Hope? And you said that it was that breath. It was just like a moment to just be with yourself.
Yeah.
To go inward. It wasn't like there was something, I mean, there's a lot of amazing magical things, but that wasn't it. It was having that time, that space, that intention with the self.
It was the knowing that the people and the space around me were in alignment enough with me that I felt safe to be able to completely let go. That's what Mountains of Hope was for me. It gave me the safety net to be able to let go, breathe, and allow.
Yeah. And I just want to speak to anyone out there who's listening, who's receiving this message now, that this is it. Like, this is the opportunity for anyone who's in crisis,
Mm,
to understand that moment of pause and finding that safe container through alignment.
yeah. And unfortunately, I think most people don't have a safe space. And ultimately, it lives within us, but we have to have it around us, reflected to us to remind us that we actually have it within us, if that makes any sense.
Yes, I'm experiencing that right now. I'm like,
Yeah.
I get that I create my own safety, and it certainly helps to have reflections around me of those who are
Right.
in alignment.
Because
That
when we
helps.
fall down, we want someone to help us up.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can't stand up. We
Yeah.
need that help.
Yeah. When we're in that being swallowed by shock and grief, and then we look around us and everyone is in not aligned, they're not seeing you, they don't understand your pain, it becomes intensified.
Yeah.
So
It
really,
does.
holding that breath and finding the alignment, and then understanding as we move through this fully human movement, we will all get a turn to be the receiver. It's the one true inevitable gift of living that we will all go through loss after loss after loss. So I'm excited that we're actually just normalizing that, and that we can be together and create connections around that so that nobody has to fully do it alone. I mean, I know the ultimate coming in and leaving this realm is it's a solo game. And
Yeah.
in the in between, we can certainly find these opportunities to receive when it's our turn to receive.
I want to add to that too, Jess, that I've been playing with that a lot in my thoughts and in my feels. What if these aren't losses? What if we didn't have that put on everything? What if it was just simply an arrow pointing to something that just says, "Hey, look at this," because if you look at this, there's a treasure
Mm-hmm.
deep down in there, and if you allow it, then that treasure is going to unfold and you're going to be able to embrace it and receive it and take it forward and use it as a new tool for living.
Mm-hmm.
Because
That's a
I was very enthralled with the death aspect for a long time.
yeah.
And even, I still obviously have moments because I'll have a weird pain. I'm like, I don't know what that is. No, what if it's this? And I'm dying again, and I am
Yeah.
dying, but we all are. We're
Yeah.
born to die, and that's just part of the experience. And what if we took that in as a gift
Yeah. We know
and
that it is
instead of
the
a
gift.
loss?
Yeah. And thank you for the reframe. And it is the thing that is paired inside the storm. When King is referencing the wreckage, he's pointing to the thing that I call the loss. And we can certainly reframe it and say, I don't know, King, what was Baltimore for you if you don't want to frame it as a losing an empire baby that you built?
It
Well,
was a spark.
well,
It was a spark of inspiration.
actually, just to answer your question this way, I've always looked at Baltimore. I don't look at the wreckage as a bad thing. I don't look at it as a loss. I look at it as a necessary lesson. And I think that's when your soul shifts. It's a transition. I think just when your consciousness raises when you understand it that way. When you understand that it was a lesson and not a L, a loss, but something that prepared me for this fully human movement. So to
Yeah.
me, it was a grade, right? We're in school constantly. I just graduated from
Right.
the next level. And that's what it was for me. At that time, it was a loss, but that's what I had to go through that to realize it's not a loss. It's actually was a blessing and need that.
Yeah.
And only
Yeah.
and that's never something someone else can say for someone else.
No, you
Like
can't,
you
right?
have to
Because when you're in it,
right.
Yeah.
it feels like loss, right?
And
And when you've actually learned from it, now you can see that that was a virtue, that was a lesson. So
exactly.
there is an alchemy that happens from hitting that point.
And that's just like nature, and again using the butterfly and the caterpillar metaphor. when the caterpillar is in that cocoon that was in their existence first and goes in this cocoon to come out as a butterfly, if you were to see that caterpillar shaking that cocoon in pain and you want to step in and cut it open and save it, thinking that you're helping it, you destroyed the process it had to go to become a butterfly. And that pain, that transformation, that's required. That's part of nature. If you look at anything in nature that changes from one shape to another shape, it goes through a metamorphosis that I'm sure would require pain. If there were cells associated with it, it would be pain in that association. And I think that's where it unites us. And I just want to rest on this piece that, but here's what I know the construct's going to do. They're going to attack us because what we're saying is anti everything everybody's used to. And no one's going to want to hear about love when they hear about so much hate right now. And they love the hate that they're hearing. They make songs about the hate they're hearing. And
they love the hate.
I've seen comments from people saying negative things because that's where they're vibrating at. And that's what I love about this message is that we're not Jehovah's Witnesses. We're not trying to convince anyone. Either you receive this and you resonate, or you get blessed and released and you move on with your life. And that to me filters out the noise. It filters out the individuals who want to come in and say, I love what you're saying, but what about this time? And they're trying to challenge you just because they think they can. They think it's an intellectual exercise, a debate, and it's not. It's an experience, it's a feeling, and if you don't feel it, then there's nothing. It's like trying to tell somebody arguing over how water feels to someone who's never been in water. Mm-hmm. That's an exercise in futility to have that kind of a conversation. So I just enjoy being able to build with aligned people and folks who understand that we have a higher purpose and we're going to do some great things in the world and not let the outside noise distract us from who we are, because we have gone through, our armor is tough because of what we've gone through in our lives. That's a blessing to me. That's what I'm grateful for.
That's right. I'm grateful for that too.
Yeah, I'll keep taking the gifts.
receive.
Yeah.
We're going to get ready to wrap up today's show. So with that being said, any other closing thoughts you want to wrap up? You want to share?
Yeah, I want to share what you were touching on just now and how we can have a whole talk about how people react to someone trying to support them and what's best. How can you actually support someone who's in the wreckage or in a storm or in the process of uncovering a gift? How can we base it on our experiences, because everybody's different.
Yeah. I think the first thing that we can do is just normalize that this life has storms.
Yeah.
And then we can let others know that they're not alone.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear that when they're in the storm, though.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I like to say I don't have the answer, but I have a answer.
Right.
That's good.
That my answer is, I think they just have to go through it.
Yeah.
Because I would have had to go through my storm. No one could have came to me and said, King, this is what you're saying about love energy. It's a way that you got to look at white people and accept them and deal with them. I wouldn't want to hear any of that.
No.
Right? I knew where I was going. I knew what I needed to do, and I was focused on it. And the storm showed me that. And I had to go through that storm just with the intensity that it gave me for me to be open to receive that message. Now I'm open. Now I'm humble. It's like, when you get to the point where it's this scene in this movie, I forgot this author, but he wrote this book, Conversations with God. I'm forgetting his name. But there's a scene where he has to eat from the trash can because he hadn't eaten in days. And he had somebody throw a burger and he saw him put the burger in the trash can. So he goes to the trash can, he has a burger. You can see that thought between stimulus response where he's now has to say, I have the question, do I want to survive or do I want to have my ego? Right. So he eats a burger. I'm saying that's when you have been broken. He was broken at that point. And then he went on to become a successful author and change his life after that. But, the point of the matter is that's everyone has to go through that. Yeah. And it's hard to watch, but that's.
Yeah. If you could have been his friend in that moment, you know, maybe a little angel on his shoulder. How do you think he would receive, you just got to go through this?
He wouldn't receive it well at all.
No. Maybe,
But it's
hey,
true.
do what you
It's
have to do. Do what you have to do. Yeah, I know from my experience, I needed safety. I needed this sense of safety around me. Around me, the people around me, I needed softness and safety. That's what I needed. At that time that I'm thinking of. But there were
Yeah.
other times where I needed somebody to be nasty, just to
Yeah.
keep me going.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know what? If I had to be a little angel on that guy's shoulder, the angel would be like, well, you get to make the choice. You live or die. You don't nourish your body, you die.
Yeah.
And that's what it ultimately comes down to.
That is
Every
that moment.
single time, choose life or not life.
Yeah. You're either adding to your life or you're dying, right?
Yep.
It's one way or the other.
Nourish yourself. Yeah.
You're either increasing or decreasing your energy.
Exactly.
And that's why you're deserving soul, Rachel. That's why we're going to continue to keep building. That's what this show is about. Jess, any last closing thoughts you want to share?
No, I just love this conversation. I can't wait to continue it.
Me too. And
Yeah.
King, it takes one to know one. Jess, you too. You guys recognize me as a deserving soul, but it takes one to know one.
Mm.
Exactly. I believe that wholeheartedly. Again, everyone that you pushed out, going back to that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so with that, we're going to wrap up today's episode of Misothering. Did I say that correct?
I don't know. We're getting there.
We're getting there. It's morphing into whatever the othering is.
Yeah, recognize the intent. We'll get the name worked out.
The fine art of othering.
Absolutely. Until next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's everybody look for ways to be more fully human. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.